Okay, hello everybody. So today I'm going to do an experiment. We know that GPT-Zero is something that was in the news. There was this young computer science student from an Ivy League university, and he designed GPT-Zero as a way of detecting whether text was written by an artificial intelligence, and then he's now optimized that program, and it's just recently dropped. It's just come out. It's just been released, I guess, a few days ago. So I'm going to try to see if GPT-Zero can detect. Is it very useful? Can it detect AI? Can it detect machine written text? Okay, so and I've basically kind of designed a couple of prompts to put into Chat GPT to write, number one, a hip hop song, two, a sonnet, three, a poem, for a commentary on the poem, and then a suggestion for a PowerPoint, and then also another prompt for climate change. And then lastly, I'm going to ask it to generate a discussion forum posting. So this is something that's real in the sense that during the pandemic, I had an online asynchronous course, and I've copied one of the questions and one of the passages from that old discussion forum from 2020, and then I'm going to ask Chat GPT to see if it can write, if you will, a response in the voice of a student, and then see if that is caught by GPT-Zero. Okay, so let's start. So let's start with the low-hanging fruit. I've pre-written some of these questions, so it'll just be easier that I don't make any typing mistakes. So the first test would be write a hip hop song about academic integrity in the voice of Drake. Let's see if it's able to do that. Okay, so it's writing the hip hop song about academic integrity in the voice of Drake. Listen up, y'all. It's your boy Drizzy. I got a message that I gotta get busy. It's about school, it's about grades, and how we're going to keep it all legit, no fakes, and so on and so forth. Okay, well, we'll let it continue to write that. Academic integrity, it's what we need to rise above and achieve our dreams. Stay true to yourself and don't bend, and you'll be on top until the very end. Got to keep it real, no shortcuts, no lies. Do the work and watch your future rise. Plagiarism, that's a big no-no, and it won't get you very far, you already know. Own your work, don't be a copycat, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's copy that. This is not a test of Chat GPT and whether it can write verse or Rhapsody. Let's paste that now into GPT-Zero. So here's the new, if you will, interface for GPT-Zero. This is the new improved version of it. I'll paste the hip hop song there. Oh, yes, I accept the terms of service. Your text is most likely human written, but there are some sentences with low perplexity. As we know, GPT-Zero looks at so-called perplexity and burstiness as tells whether it's written by an AI or not. So there's a few here, the ones that are in yellow. So actually, very little is likely to be written by AI. For some reason, this sentence here it doesn't like. Okay, so that's the first test. It thinks this song written by GPT, the Chat GPT, is most likely human. Okay, so maybe it's failed in that sense, that exercise or that test. Let's go to the next test. Let's see if it can write a sonnet about nature in the voice of Margaret Atwood. O nature, with your beauty and your might, you paint the world with colors bright and fair, and bring a sense of peace to day and night, a respite from our busy modern care. The rolling hills and valleys green and gold, your ancient trees and oceans deep wide, are monuments to time, its tales untold, of life and death and secrets locked inside. You teach us that the world is more than man, but that we are but a tiny part of it, that we must learn to live in harmony and keep your fragile balance lest we fall. So let us, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the sonnet by Margaret. Let's copy that again. We're not testing whether Chat GPT is good at writing sonnets. I'll refresh this, go back to here. I'll paste in the sonnet into the detector and see what it says. Your text is likely to be written entirely by a human. So none of this sonnet is identified or highlighted in yellow. Okay, so maybe it fails in the second test. Okay, so let's do the third test. I'm going to ask it to write a much longer poem. A 500-word poem about climate change and the Arctic in the style of Pablo Neruda. Pablo Neruda is a famous Chilean poet, artist, philosopher, political activist, as we know. So I'll ask it to do that. The Arctic, once a place of frozen grace, a world of ice and snow, of shifting light, the symphony of blues and whites in space, a kingdom of winds, of days and nights. Okay, yeah. So I think what I'm trying to describe here is I think the GPT-Zero has problems with so-called creative writing. It's not so good at detecting that. Let's see if it's able to detect this. It should be finished in a second. The sea begins to rise, where the forests are burning, creatures flee, the world is dying, the earth cries out, and still we carry on with blinders on. Yeah, okay. But words are not enough, the actions must. To save the world, to heal its broken heart, to change our ways, to not let greed and lust, to lead us down the path of our own part. The Arctic, once a place of frozen grace, a world of something. Oh, I'll let it finish. I did ask, maybe I asked for too many words, but it's good to write a bit longer, 500 words. It calls to us a voice, a mournful cry, a plea for help, a message from the future, from the day. So let us listen, let us act, and save the world. Heal is broken. Oh, it's being a bit repetitive. Or maybe that's part of the poem. Okay, there we go. So, and let the Arctic be a world apart. Okay, I probably should not have asked for a 500-word poem, but anyways, maybe 300 would have been better for this test. Let's go to GPT-Zero. I'll refresh, go back here, go here, paste, get results. Yeah, I suspected this would be the result because I've been playing around with it. Your text is likely to be written entirely by a human. So none of this poem written by the machine is identified by GPT-Zero as machine written. Okay, so it's failed on that part. Now let's ask it, I think the detector is probably better with this kind of request. So now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to write, can you suggest a PowerPoint format for the comment? So, oops, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Please write a commentary. So this is much more kind of academic-y, student-y. Please write a commentary on the following poem. The commentary should discuss the style and the poetic rhythm of the writing. Okay, that seems like more scholarly, academic-y, and I think in the past, the detector has been good at catching these types of things. Okay, so I paste it in the poem. I ask it to go. It's generating. Okay. This poem is a powerful meditation on the changes wrought by climate change on the Arctic, one of the most remote and otherworldly environments on Earth. The poem begins by painting a vivid picture of the Arctic as it once was, a place of frozen grace where blues, whites, and space intermingle in a symphony. The poem then pivots to describe the changes brought about by human activities, in particular the scorching heat that's causing the ice to melt and rivers to rise. The walrus's seals and polar bears are seen as victims of these changes, and the speaker reflects with sadness on how the world they once knew is lost without a trace. And then it says, the poem turns to a broader commentary on human behavior. The poem's style is poetic, and I did ask for it to look at the style. The use of first-person narration, blah, blah, blah. In conclusion, it's powerful, blah, blah. Okay, so that's a good commentary, very kind of maybe first-year English or maybe even high school. Let's go to Chat GPT. Now I'm hoping it's able to detect this. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Paste, get results. Yeah. So there you go. It is much more able to see that, I think, as written entirely by AI, right? So I think that's good. So it's able to catch that commentary. Now let's see if I said, can you now make that commentary? I say, can you suggest a PowerPoint format for the commentary you provided on the poem? Which again, could be a common request, right, for Chat GPT. Many people are asking Chat GPT to help it with outlines, with PowerPoint presentations, for, if you will, brainstorming, so on and so forth. So here it's going to suggest, I think, a number of slides. 1, introduction, of course. 2, the Arctic, describing it as it was. 3, the changes brought on by climate. 4, human behavior. 5, call to action. 6, conclusion. So a very short slide presentation. Okay. Again, we're not testing whether Chat GPT is good at doing work, but rather, is the language that it's using easily identified by GPT-Zero as written by a machine? In this case, no. So it says your text, which was the PowerPoint slides, your text is likely to be written entirely by a human. So it was able to identify the commentary as machine written, but was unable to identify the PowerPoint slides as written by a human. So that's interesting. I'm not sure what that means. And then let's do one more or 2 more, and then we'll call it a day. Can you write a 500-word essay about the dangers of climate change in Vancouver, BC, or climate dangers affecting? I'll just leave it. Dangers of climate change in Vancouver, BC. Please mention wildfires, heat dome, and rising sea levels. Okay. So why have I requested this kind of very simple exercise? Because I think this is a common thing that maybe students might be using it for. Certainly not about climate change, but students might be wanting to use it to help them write something like a 500 or 1,000-word essay about a particular topic. I picked climate change because it's something that is readily understood by most people. Right? Climate change, it writes, is one of the most pressing issues facing the world today. Its impacts are being felt around the world, blah, blah, blah. Wildfires have become a growing concern, blah, blah, blah. Another major impact of climate change in Vancouver is the increasing frequency of heat domes. A heat dome is a high-pressure weather system, perhaps, blah, blah, blah. In addition to wildfires and heat domes, rising sea levels, blah, blah, blah. In conclusion, climate change is a major threat to Vancouver and its residents. From the frequency of wildfires to the rising heat domes and rising sea levels, the impacts of global. Okay, so let's see. This is a very classic kind of thing that someone might ask ChatGPT to write for them. It has very low complexity, I think. Yeah. So there, very good at that, identifying. It says your text is likely to be written entirely by AI. Okay. But here's the point. So that's what it wrote. But what if we put it into something that spun the grammar, something like spinbot? So I'm going to take that same text, I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to ask it to spin. the grammar. So what it does is if you look here, this was the original on the left. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues. It just flips, if you will, some of the sentences. Environmental change is quite possibly of the, there's a problem, of the most major problem confronting the present reality, and its effects are being looked about the world. Remembering for Vancouver, England, blah, blah, blah. Vancouver is a waterfront city that is especially defenseless against the risks of environmental change. From out of control wildfires to warm vaults and rising oceans, the effects of environmental change. Blah, blah, blah. So I think there are some problems with the way it spun the grammar. I'm not sure if it's that well written, but it's not, again, this is not a test of spinbot, but rather if we use some type of software to change the grammar, would that then confuse or fool GPT-Zero? Okay, so let's copy that. We'll go back to GPT-Zero, refresh, and then paste in the text that the Chat GPT wrote, but which I pasted into spinbot and had it change some of the grammar. And let's ask, yeah. Your text is now likely to be written entirely by a human. So in a way, I think what it shows is if you can introduce grammatical mistakes, or if you can change some of the grammar, some of the sentence structures, the flat sentence structure that it's looking for, if it can be changed, then it fools, if you will, GPT-Zero. We can also spin it again. You can constantly spin it. There you go. This is maybe a better spin. Okay, this begins with environmental change is quite possibly of the most major problem confronting this present reality, and its effects are being looked at about the world. I don't want that. Let's spin it again. Environmental trend confronting the present reality, and its effects are being looked about the world. Remembering what? No. Okay. So it's a spinbot is limited, but certainly it can change the language that is then pasted into GPT-Zero, which then I think could confuse or maybe even fool it. So again, this is not about we're not testing spinbot, but we're showing that if you can use different types of, if you will, electronic programs or computer programs or websites, I think it is possible to fool GPT-Zero. Yeah. So, okay, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Here we go. This is the last one, which is something that I had used in one of my online discussion forums during the pandemic, or earlier on in the pandemic, where I had a discussion forum. It's basically about a debate around gender expression and the changes to the Human Rights Act. So what I've written here is, pasted below is an online discussion forum from an asynchronous online university course. The text below includes a response from a student named Jaspreet. That's not their name, I just made that up. Can you write a response that tries to answer the original question and also responds to the student's posting? Your answer should also elaborate on Jaspreet's response to the question. And then here is the quote by one of the MPs in this parliamentary debate. The MP is Bhutan Sweet, and she talks a lot about chromosomes here. And then the discussion question in the online forum was, what do you think MP Bhutan Sweet is saying above? Elaborate and unpack it. And then this is what Jaspreet writes. And let's see what, let's see what Chat GPT thinks. Enter. So I'm asking it to I'm asking it in a sense to pretend to be a student. So this is, I think, a much more complicated test in the sense I'm testing whether, well, I guess I'm showing two things. I'm showing here that Chat GPT could write a response for a discussion forum, an online discussion forum, and it begins by saying, I agree with Jaspreet's analysis, blah, blah, blah. Gender identity and gender expression is a complex and nuanced issue that can't be reduced to simple biology. The Bill C-16 recognizes this complexity and aims to protect transgendered individuals from discrimination, so on, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's good. So let's see if that response is detected by GPT, right? That was entirely written by a machine that's in, it's a response in a discussion forum. So there you go. So it says your text may include parts written by AI. So it's actually unclear. Well, most of it, I guess, here. More than half, right? This part in the middle is not identified as AI. And then the different perplexity and burstiness scores, which we don't have to go over. Okay. So there you go. So it identified that. So let's review, I guess, what it did or did not detect. So GPT-Zero did not detect the hip hop song about academic integrity by Drake. It thought that was written by a human. The sonnet about nature written in the voice of Margaret Atwood, it also was not able to detect that. It thought that was written by, it said likely written by a human, I think. And then the 500-word poem about climate change in the style of Pablo Neruda, that also defeated GPT-Zero or confused it. It didn't know that that was written by a machine. It said it was likely, I think, to be written by a human. In fact, if I recall, none of it was highlighted at all in yellow. And then the commentary on the poem, where it discusses the style and the poetic rhythm of the writing, then that did identify that as written by a machine. But then when I suggested, when I asked it to make PowerPoint slides, when I pasted that into GPT-Zero, it didn't know, it thought that was written by a human. And then when I asked it to write the essay on climate change, it did correctly identify that as written by the machine. But when I put it into spinbot to change some of the grammar, and then I pasted it back into GPT-Zero, it then was confused. Then it thought it was actually written by a human, right? And then lastly, the more complicated example, the example of a potential, or if you will, a fake post to an online discussion forum where you're responding to another student, which is I think a use scenario. It identified the response that written by a machine as majority AI. There's some parts that I wasn't sure about. So that's very useful. Yeah. But one thing that I did notice in doing this test was, and this is, I thought, quite interesting. When I pasted in that quote from the MP, Boutin Suite, and this is a Hansard transcript from 2016. So this is long before any AI was on the horizon. Here's her writing. Here's her speech that she gave in Parliament. And this is so weird. It thinks that Boutin Suite, MP, the member of Parliament, her text was written entirely by AI, which I think is probably not the case, since there weren't any sophisticated AIs like that in 2016. Long before Chat GPT came onto the scene. Okay, so there you go. So a mixed bag. It wasn't so good at detecting the creative writing, much better at detecting, say, asking it to write an essay or a commentary. But if you pasted those commentaries into spinbot or other, if you will, grammar changing programs, it then confuses GPT-Zero. So I would have to say, I would be hesitant to use GPT-Zero as a tool to identify, if you will, academic integrity issues, because I would always be afraid that there's potential false positives, right? Or other types of mistakes that it could be making. Okay, so there you go. Thanks for listening.